the world around us and to instill it into others, passing down our knowledge and our wisdom to our children, to students, and to anyone with a willingness to learn, generation after generation. A never-ending cycle that impacts every individual and affects us all as a collective. Assalamu alaikum, welcome brothers and sisters. My name is Sultan, and I'm honored and excited to join you all on what we hope to be an evening of fruitful instruction to inshallah instill what we gave from tonight into our daily lives or passing on to those around us. I will be your master of ceremonies for this evening alongside Brother Alkhoei Nasser. As you may know, the base theme of tonight's event comes from a hadith by Imam Ali. Learn your religion, unite and inherit. This hadith is also included in the mission statement of the Seeking Wisdom organization, an organization which envisions to become the voice of the youth in North America. Their mission is to provide a platform for millennials where their voices are heard, their questions are answered, where they will become community leaders of tomorrow in accordance with Islamic fundamentals. Now let's begin with tonight's schedule. Just going to give you guys a quick rundown. Brother Alkhoei Foundation will introduce our honorary guests. Then Sheikh Azhar Nasser will take the stage to discuss modern day taboos, materialism, and peer pressure. Thereafter, we'll begin a Q&A section. If you guys have any questions, we have people going around. Just jot down your question and inshallah we'll get the answer later on. After that, we will conclude by the organizers from Seeking Wisdom. And if you'd like, there will be refreshments afterward as well. And before we begin, I just want to go over some housekeeping rules. I'd like to kindly request that you minimize your cell phone use, and to also note that the questions have to be given to someone who's coming around, that way they can come up front and we can answer them. And lastly, tonight, I ask you all to be seekers of wisdom and seekers of knowledge, and to actively seek both of these things. Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So please be inquisitive, write down your questions. Sheikh is more than happy to answer them, and get involved. May Allah and His most beloved creations guide you all, and inshallah we will have a wonderful evening together. Please welcome Dr. Alkhoei Nasser to welcome Sheikh Azhar Nasser with your loudest salawat. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sister Nura. The respected scholars, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. Sheikh, I think they think that with your long flight, your ears are still clogged, because when I said Masalam, you heard the response from them. You know, this is not what we were expecting, right? So let us see. You want me to do that? Let's try this again. Assalamu alaikum. That's better. In New Jersey, there's a special moment. And he, at times like this, comes in very handy, very useful, because he generates a lot of important energy among the people. So what he does is, he does something specific. If I tell the name of this person, let's see if one of you can recognize what he does and to duplicate it. His name is Majid Musi. Come on then.
Haydari!
Haydari! Sabdari! Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And now we can get started. I have the distinct honor and pleasure of presenting Sheikh Azhar Nasser. The Sheikh was born and raised in Michigan, and after obtaining his degree from University of Michigan, he went to Najaf where he studied under the guidance of Ayatollah Sistani and Ayatollah Hakim. He is the religious director of CBE, which produces short spiritual videos, and the founder of Tasneem Institute, which gives weekend crash courses on Islam. But there's something very specific about the Sheikh that makes him unique. That is his control and use of social media. I will read some of the statements made by him and the questions that have been asked of him and the responses that he has given on Twitter and other things for you to get a feel of where he stands. So for example, the statement on wudu, quote, "My respected brothers and sisters, please stop doing wudu like you are in a Neutrogena commercial." Unquote. Trump's Muslim ban. Muslims invented the coffee you drink, the algebra you don't understand, the hospitals you visit, the universities your dad paid you to get in, the toothbrush you barely use, and the pinhole camera on your phone that I wish somebody will take away from you. Unquote. Sheikh, this is a question. Sheikh, how was my Quranic recitation? Answer. Aside from proper pronunciation, it was great. Question. Sheikh, my name is Gunther, and I think you Muslims are all ignorant. The Muslims were spelled Moozlims. Well, Gunther, I probably read more than you sleep, and you look pretty rested. Secondly, your pronunciation of the word Muslim indicates to me that you need to spend less time around farm animals. Question. If these Muslims want their Sharia law in this country, why don't they bleep off back to India? It's not Pakistan, it's in India this time. The Sharia over there was spelled Shakira. Answer. Shakira law? Question mark. I promise you no one will force you to dance, Habibi. Question. Sheikh, can you interpret my dreams? I don't know where these people come to you all from. I mean, I feel bad for Alan sometimes. So on dreams. Your dreams, the answer. Your dreams mean that you have indigestion and need to stop eating so much before you go to sleep. Question. I'm embarrassed to pray at the airport. Any advice? Answer. Face your fear. Recite the adhan loudly, especially the Allahu Akbar part. But it's not all just fun. There's tremendous wisdom in those responses. And there's a lot of seriousness too. Let me give you a couple of non-traditional examples. Don't ever equate depression with weak faith. Being depressed doesn't mean you have drifted away from God. It just means you're human. Unquote. There are many lectures of the Sheikh on depression. There's one which is an hour and a half or so, which is on YouTube. You may want to watch that. There's a 3-minute video on what a virtuous Muslim husband should be like. And he quotes the 3 A's, which are quoted by various marriage counselors, etc., on affection, appreciation, and finally attention. But what makes it different is how he does it, how he introduces the video. On the post, what he says over there is, quote, if your wife is making you sleep on the couch, here are some advice that may improve the situation. And after that, he presents the video. So I hope you got a pretty good look into what the Sheikh is all about and what he has done on social media. And your questions are going to be addressed to the Sheikh, and hopefully we have had some questions before. There are going to be questions live from the audience, which he will be taking. Now, without further ado, let us welcome our esteemed, honorable guest, Sheikh Azhar Nasser, with the loudest of his salawat.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إن الله لا يغير ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor and it's a privilege to be spending this evening with you. As you can probably tell, I have flu-like symptoms, so if I'm going to make it through this presentation, I cannot have an audience that is like zombies. So I need a bit more enthusiasm, and I need a much louder salawat. Sallu ala Muhammad. As I was listening to the Q&As that I've been posting on Twitter, I came to the realization that I can be pretty mean. So I promise you that inshallah during today's Q&A, I won't be nearly as harsh as sometimes I may sound on social media. Now, the verse that I began with is the verse that many of us have memorized, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, surely God will not change the condition of a people unless they change themselves. Now, when we speak about change, sometimes we think about change on an individual level. You want to do things to improve your life. You want to start waking up for Salatul Fajr. You want to start going to the gym to shed those extra pounds. You want to get a master's degree. You want to get a promotion at work. Sometimes we talk about change on an individual level. But throughout the Holy Quran, you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also speaks about a different type of change. And that is change that happens at a societal level. You see, brothers and sisters, the beautiful thing about Islam is not an individualistic tradition. Every day, 5 times a day, you stand in salah and you recite Surah Al-Fatiha. And you might not realize this, but every day you address Allah with the spirit of community. How do you recite Surah Al-Fatiha? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawm Ad-Din. You basically start the dua, the surah, by speaking about who God is. He's the source of all goodness, and therefore He's deserving of all praise. Don't ever lose hope in Him, because He's the beneficent, the merciful. Don't let His mercy embolden you to commit sin, because He's also Maliki Yawmiddin. And then you make your request. What do you ask for? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. You say, it is you alone who we worship. Even if you're standing by yourself, you're praying furada, you use the plural pronoun. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. You don't say, guide me to the straight path. What do you say? Guide us to the straight path. Even in your spirituality, Allah doesn't want you to be selfish. You have to think about lifting yourself and also lifting the people around you. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, even on the Day of Judgment, when the believers are escorted into paradise, so in dunya, we address Allah as a community. And even when the mu'mineen are escorted into paradise, what does Allah say in the Quran? وَسِيقَ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا رَبَّهُمْ إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ زُمَرًا. Allah says the mu'mineen are escorted in groups to paradise. So you see that this idea of community is instilled in us in dunya, and we enter Jannah not as individuals, but as a community. When we speak about changing our community, improving the condition of our community, before we can do that, before change can happen, we have to first identify the problems that we have and the challenges. And after you pinpoint what the problems are within the Muslim community, that's when you can explore solutions. It's easy to point out the problems. It takes great minds to come together and formulate viable solutions. Once you identify the problems and you put forward the solutions, that's when change can happen. But the problem is, my dear brothers and sisters, our communities, and I've traveled around the world, we have a hard time coming to terms with the reality that we have a lot of the same problems non-Muslims have. You know, when I think about the challenges, I was asked to speak about, peer pressure, taboo topics, materialism, but I think we can take all of these different topics and put them in one category, and that is the modern day challenges that we face as Muslims living in the West. When I think about the problems that we have as a Muslim community, we essentially have two types of problems, two challenges. We have external problems and we have internal problems. Now I want to speak for a few moments about the external problems, and then I'll segue into really the meat of our conversation tonight, which is addressing these internal problems. We can't change the world if we don't first change ourselves. And sometimes the self is the ummah. We have to change ourselves before we can invite people to Islam and tell them that we have something better for them. When it comes to external problems, the key word is Islamophobia. We're all battling this daily struggle called Islamophobia. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, the reality is that we live in a world today where it's becoming increasingly difficult to be a practicing Muslim. And we have to be aware of the challenges that we face today. We can't just live in a bubble and ignore everything that's happening in the world. We have a hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, salawatullahi alayhi, where he says, Al-alimu bi-zamanih La tahjunu alayhi al-lawabis. The one who knows his time is not bombarded with confusion. The problem is, my dear brothers and sisters, many of our communities still act like we're living in the 1970s. We're not thinking about the world that we live in. We're trying to create these artificial bubbles, and we're ignoring the times. We're not adapting to the times. Do you know why Islam survived, my dear brothers and sisters? Because our Imams knew their times and they adapted accordingly. If Imam Zayn al-Abidin, if Imam Zayn al-Abidin insisted that the only way to teach Islam is from the minbar, Islam would have never reached us today. But he adapted. He did something innovative. He says, I don't have the minbar now, right? There's a Muslim dude. He uses dua. He uses his private communication with Allah to teach you and I